Let me know when we're good, Cheryl.
Yeah, just bear with me 1 minute. It's almost done. Okay, you can go ahead, Perry.
All right, we'll call the meeting in order at 7:01. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
I
allegiance
pledge allegiance to the flag
of the
of the United States of America
and to
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we're going to start with the public hearing on the Middleburg district-wide safety plan. There's content online. I don't know if who you want to sort of lead the summary of this.
Brian, you want to take that?
Sure, thanks. Good evening, everybody, and good evening to our public. So in our public hearing, the purpose of the public hearing is to be able to answer any questions that they may have, or be in a position to hear some comments that they may have for us to think about for even for future reference. And then later on, in the agenda, there's an opportunity for the board to do the same, because on the agenda is the approval of the district-wide safety plan. So, and all those questions and comments can happen if that's what you'd like during public session in discussion. So I don't know, Cheryl, if anybody has submitted any questions or comments regarding our district-wide safety plan. What I'll share in general terms is that this is our safety plan that governs how we do different drills and overall safety plan that includes general considerations and planning guidelines. It includes risk reduction and prevention and intervention. It includes how we will respond to different safety, whether it be threats or protocols. It includes how we communicate, and it talks about recovery as well. And within, there are 5 different appendices in that plan that include our school buildings. There are building level emergency response plans, which are actually confidential due to the nature of what's in there. We wouldn't want everybody understanding, as an example, where we would evacuate to in the case of an emergency. And then it also talks about, what district resources are out there, and it's a and then there's also an appendix that talks about regulation compliance. So that's on our website. It's been for the past month, and there is a 30-day regulatory requirement that for the posting of our district safety plan for the opportunity to have any feedback from our public. So, and then it's also been, Cheryl, our district clerk, also made it available via board docs for anybody who wanted to be able to see it. So at this point, Cheryl, any comments or questions at all from our public?
No, nothing.
Brian, can you talk about how it was developed, who in coordination and in partnership with whom? And
Sure. Yeah. So in a typical time, what would end up happening is we would have our district safety plan both created and updated, actually, by our district safety team. So in COVID world, it didn't happen quite that way. It didn't get reviewed by the district safety team in earnest, because we really didn't have full meetings last year. But this is a document that was created and updated by the previous year's district safety team in collaboration with Altaris. And Paul Tobin was our board member who was on the safety team last year. And then this was also reviewed. So we have a new consultant this year in Frank Guglieri, who is the regional safety coordinator from Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES. And he and his team did review this with us, and we have a compliant document this year as well. So that's a little bit about the process.
So, I mean, any questions from the board? Basically something that something you feel that the public should be made aware of? Because we'll have a second, as Brian said, a confidential portion of this, so we can talk about specifics. But if there's something that you feel like it needs to be asked in front of the public, or the public needs to know, now's the time. I mean, I have sort of a separate question, sort of a side question. Does this reflect, I mean, does the overall plan reflect all of the new video surveillance equipment that we've put in? And does it, and I know we probably can't, or we shouldn't go like too far in depth to it, but how do we sort of establish this as an emergency response system versus a surveillance system? And I know that probably sounds, I don't know, it sounds like I'm quibbling over terms, but it's not. Especially, I mean, in the public sector, there's a big difference between knowing, having a video system that's used only during emergencies, that the local police can be given access, local fire can be given access, versus a system where we're watching. So I'm curious if that is, if we've taken that in the past. I don't know as our cameras were worth worrying about as much, but the cameras now are beautiful. And so I think the nature of the video surveillance needs to be something we make sure the public understands, not where they are, not how to hack into them, none of that stuff, but the purpose.
So that we have not, with a new system that we have not delved into that within this plan, and certainly not with that type of granularity that you describe. But what I will say is, if we wanted to speak about it generally in the future, there is a section called proactive buildings security measures. And to the extent that we wanted to get a little bit more explicit, we would be able to do that within that section of the plan.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, a lot of it's, and especially because of recent events and changing social policies and things, surveillance has I don't want to say negative, even though it probably is, but it has sort of a who and when and why, and do they really need to? And a lot of things that were sort of just, it's okay because it'll make them safer, aren't necessarily that way now. Anyway, we can talk more about it in executive session, but I do think the parents need to know, when their kids are in school, sort of who's watching, right? Are my kids constantly under surveillance, and is that a terrible thing, or or is it triggered by an alert, an alarm, one of those things? But we can talk more in executive session. Anybody else?
Yeah, Perry, I think really what parents should be secure in knowing is that we've really ramped up our security systems, and that the children are as safe as possible. That we've really ramped up monitoring comings and goings of visitors and people that may be on our property, either for legitimate reasons or maybe not so.
Yeah, like I said, I think the I mean, we have made a major investment. I'm assuming the public has heard, in recent meetings, the investment we've made in improving our overall system, getting it so that, it can really provide the foundation we need for safety and security. It's more, my thing is more about letting parents know whether, is there somebody just basically sitting like I am now watching the cameras, or is it, teachers are watching or is it really, the cameras are there to diagnose safety and security issues. And again, I think I know recently, because a lot of companies have actually abandoned some of their software because of issues of, just issues with the response to surveillance. Anyway, anybody else?
Yeah, we're discussing this now versus later.
Well, if it's something you think the public needs to know, John, if not, if it's something that you feel like it's going to expose the security in the district,
No.
we should. Yeah.
A couple comments. So I'm just wondering, where did this template come from? Because it seems like a very overhaul of what we had, and I was wondering why that was done.
Yeah, so when the first couple of years that we worked with Altaris, this was originally an Altaris template, and they created that template that was consistent and compliant with the state regs, and then we've just used it, and then Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES, after having reviewed it, we weren't going to do a full overhaul. We were generally going to keep our template, but there was. We got confirmation and collaboration from them that we do have a document that remains compliant, but that, John, is where the template came from.
Okay, thanks. That's
Sure.
good.
Yeah.
The other thing too is I noticed we have I think there were, let's see if I have it right, there was one parent and another person that was called a parent that's an employee, and I don't think the state thinks an employee is a parent, even though they are. I don't think that counts as a parent. So just, the state wants more non-employee people that are called parents involved, so we shouldn't try to skimp on that kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think we should do that. And in fact, as a matter of fact, that person that's listed as a parent is now effective your board meeting tonight, a district employee as well. So to your point, that's something that we should definitely be thinking about. So we would have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4 district employees who are parents, but your caution is let's get an outside view of someone who's not also a district employee, and then that's something we should look at.
Right, the state rules, right.
Yeah.
Yep, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else? Any Cheryl? Any new comments, questions?
Nope.
Okay. Nothing in Zoom either. Nope. Okay.
Could I ask, Paul? You were the representative. You have anything to say about the plan? Participation.
You mute.
Yeah, I want to thank Brian and the committee for their hard work. I mean, it's a lot of detail. We sat through a good amount of meetings, especially early on, up at school, with what if this happens, what if that happens, and it comes to a point where you can't just keep reenacting every possible scenario, and you have to snap the football and get off the line of scrimmage and get the ball moving. I think Brian and the committee did a really good job with that. So I want to thank them all. I mean, it's a lot of work. And like I said, a lot of different things can happen. You have to be prepared for everything today. And I think we have a really good, solid plan and documents. So I was very happy to be part of it. And I think everybody was informed that was on the committee, just enough to know what they need to know. And then everything else, stays confidential as needed.
Thanks, Paul.
So, hey, Paul, one sort
Thank
of,
you, Paul.
one additional question. I mean, do you feel like that this plan is sort of, like it's not COVID specific? Does it, I mean, I'm assuming it addresses enough of COVID to make it a valid plan for moving forward, but that it's not something we're going to have to gut and toss when, knock on wood, that COVID goes away or isn't the theater
No.
it is.
No, I think it serves us right now, and then in the future, there's different components of it that can be added to, like Brian mentioned before, per as one example. That as we develop more and more protocol, we could always put them in there within certain areas of that plan that exist already. So if you wanted to add something, for example, on our tracing or on our health screening process, those types of things, we could add on as but to get going and get opened and get set, we could be ready to go with this, what's existing right now,
Okay.
for sure.
Yeah, I was like, if we had changed the process for, I don't know, a fire drill, and we changed it to do, and hopefully we didn't, but we changed it to do social distancing and, find your mask before you go out, and then we got to pull all that back when, hopefully COVID becomes, history, however it becomes history.
I think we can modify it either way, to add or delete and get the group together somehow and modify things as we need them. Or if something were to come up that we feel we wanted to really, stress or review, if God forbid something happened that we felt we could add to, we could always do that as well.
Okay.
My first 2 years out of retirement, I worked for a consulting firm who was the competitor with Alteris. So I did a number of districts, and I was glad to be part of this committee. And like I said, I was really impressed with Alteris, that they have a good amount of the clientele in Westchester, Dutchess, and Putnam. They really do. So it was hard to go up against them. But, I learned a lot. And being on the committee, I learned even more. So I want to thank everyone. And again, thank Brian for his leadership, too, on it. Successful.
Thank you, Paul.
Anybody else? All right. Hold on. I got to get back to my agenda. All right. So we don't need to do anything except go to executive session later. Okay. So
later on in the agenda, so there'll be two pieces of that. Later on in the agenda, you will approve that document. And then the executive session discussion will be regarding building safety plans because of the fragile or secure content of what's actually in there.
Yep. Okay. So do I have well, first of all, is there anything that we need to pull from the consent agenda for anybody? Okay. Do I have a motion on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
I just had one, this is like a very minor detail that there was one line on there where there were dates for a leave of absence. And I think the dates were like September 2020 through June 2020.
Oh, thank
So
you.
I'm sure one of them just needs to be switched. I mean, as I said, it's very minor, but I didn't know if that made a big.
Thank you, Jen. It should be June 21.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? I mean, the only comment I have is it looks like we're making some progress on getting some folks. I see the custodial workers. I know some of the what do you call it? Extra class stuff. I'm glad to see that we've been able to make some progress on it. Any other comments? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any against? Okay. Correspondence, we have nothing. Personnel. yeah, I mean, this is probably one of the most important hurdles we have. So maybe we can get an idea of where we are.
Cheryl's been busy posting and coordinating with principals and having lots of interviews. So Cheryl, you want to give us an update on your progress?
Sure. So we have 23 total open positions, but 4 of those are in-house for the AM bus supervisors. So we reposted that, and I contacted the building secretaries to let them know it was in addition to the original normal posting. So hopefully people will now apply for that, knowing that they're not applying for something their coworkers normally do. So with those out of the way, we have 19 open positions for the outside. And so we've been in the process of doing interviews today, tomorrow. I've extended some of the postings, but in total, we have 11 monitor positions, and we have 4 that we would be able to fill if the people accept our offers after the interviews are done tomorrow. So we're going to need 7. I did contact a hiring firm, a temp agency. So they could help us out with that, of course, with the fee. So I'm waiting for a quote on that amount. And then we have 4 teaching assistant positions. 3 of those would be filled if people accept after the interviews tomorrow. And so we have 1 more that we need. So we're hoping that we will be able to fill that one. And then Mike has 2 custodial, the temp positions that still need to be filled that we're having a hard time getting. He's just having a hard time with people wanting to accept those jobs. He's interviewed people. He's had some people turn him down. So we're having a hard time with that. And then from the last meeting, John, you asked if we would be able to have people come in for 4 days if we needed to do that. And we can hire them as hourly employees. So that's up to our discretion. And I also checked on nursing temp agencies for substitute nurses, and they feel that that will be very difficult to find somebody who would want to stay available for possible, openings. But if we did have a need for a long term, if somebody had to go out for an extended amount of time, they would definitely be able to help us with that. So we essentially need to fill 8 monitors still, 1 teaching assistant, 2 custodial workers, and I did receive from Dutchess County the list from the county so that I can start canvassing for the typist monitors. So that will start tomorrow, but that's a process. It usually takes about 2 weeks to turn it around. So
The typist monitors, there was 2 that were needed.
yeah, 1 in Elm and 1 in Alden.
So that takes us to 19. So the 19 includes the other 2 folks who are in maintenance?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Cheryl, were you able to post on Indeed?
I didn't post on Indeed. I wanted to wait to see how many I'm going to need for this after the interviews. So I did update my monitor posting, trying to change the wording to get people interested. So I'm going to post that out tomorrow and see what happens. I don't know.
So we have 2 weeks to hire 12 to forget about hiring, find 12 people that right now don't exist even in pre-interview status.
Yep. And we're not alone in this issue. From what I understand, other districts, it's just a really hard time to get people right now.
I mean, does it make it clear that, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but some or all of these positions come with benefits,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean,
Yep.
you know, with, I thought the last number I saw was 10% unemployment in New York. It feels like we're just not reaching the folks. But there's also, I think there's also some sort of, like at Dutchess County School Board, they were telling us that there were tons of school employees laid off. And yet we don't seem to be able, you know what I mean?
Yeah, we were talking about that today, and that's an interesting dilemma for people as well, because if other districts or the BOCES, if they change their hybrid model, those people are going to want to go back to their original jobs, you know?
Well,
So a lot of people could be holding out for those positions to open back up. So that's going to make it difficult too. So
I just would have thought that you know, the unemployment window should be running out. That, you know, even if you did come and work for us for 2 months and then resigned, so what, right? At least we had the people we needed. Anyway, you know, so I'm assuming somehow we're going to figure out what, you know, what happens, right? If we've got 12 people right now that we need, what out of 19?
right.
What happens if we don't find them?
One of the things that we did here in the business office is we created electronic onboarding to be able to expedite things, because that was all manual previously. And so we're working on getting that as an electronic process. So once we identify the people, we're going to be able to move quickly on getting them on board.
How, I mean, do we have the, you know, it's one thing to interview somebody, but then I assume there's some probably New York State clearinghouse that vets these folks for whatever, criminal records, you know, is there, I mean, are they working on an escalated time frame?
So
So
what happens is all of our employees are required to be fingerprinted, and I actually look up to verify if people are fingerprinted. So once they're cleared for their fingerprints, we go on Teach. I look it up, and they're, you know, they're good to go. So, and I get the information from their application. So before we're even doing the interview, we already know that they're okay, unless it's somebody who's new to this system and hasn't been fingerprinted. But then we require them, before we would hire them, that they have to go get fingerprinted, and then I have to wait. And it's not a big turnaround from that. So it's usually within 24, 48 hours. Once they're fingerprinted, I can find them.
okay, I mean, you know, 24 to 48 hours is going to be
I know.
pretty long coming up soon. So, all right, anybody else?
Cheryl, it might be a crazy idea, and Laura, I don't know, maybe you thought about this or talked to other superintendents about it. How about the in-between candidates that have finished their student teaching at Marist or other schools maybe and aren't really finished, you know, and need some experience for their resume? Like, you know, I don't know if you guys have reached out or could reach out. It might be a little bit of a help. Might be some people, they could already be fingerprinted too from the student teaching and just be almost finished up. And maybe they want to do like a half a year or gain some experience. First thing I look for on resumes is people that have been in contact with kids, that have been around kids and be able to work with them and show some experience on that end. So I don't know if we could look at that maybe, but it might be a thought. Might be worth it. We're not getting anything else.
Yep.
Right.
Thank you.
Well, have we looked at companies like Manpower, and I mean, are we allowed to do that or not?
Yeah. So I contacted an agency, and I gave them all the information, and they're going to send me a quote of how much it'll cost us if we hire somebody from their pool.
Okay, I mean, we told them like how many we need. So worst case, if I mean, because those folks don't get benefits. So worst case, if we, you know, we come up 5 people short, we should be able to grab them from, it's probably cost us more, but we don't pay their benefits.
No, we would, so the way it would work for the monitors and they would send us people, but we would end up hiring them, but they would give us a pool of people that we could just hire directly from that. It
Cheryl-
wouldn't be where we're paying them for the hours.
Are you dealing with more of a recruiter or a temp agency?
Temp agency.
Yeah, I'm surprised because, I mean, I literally hired hundreds of the folks of everything from, high-level programmers to project managers to basically clerks.
No,
And I never hired any of them.
And I currently have that right now, Perry, at my job. I mean, they usually have probably a $3 to $5 per hour that they take, and then you pay the difference, but that's really it.
But they don't work for you. I mean, they're not your employee.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I would call companies like Manpower and there's another.
It was Kelly or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, just see what, and I know you guys are like inundated with this stuff, but if we need a contingency plan and it's going to cost us $5 an hour to get two people from to make us whole, we get two people from Manpower, and I don't know what they charge. They're probably if they're smart, they're probably charging extra, knowing how many people need people.
Can we also put it on something like Indeed, or is that another?
So when I originally posted, I didn't use Indeed. I used Hudson Valley jobs. So, and then a couple of others through the newspaper. So I went through Arbosi's and then I choose which forms I want. I didn't choose Indeed. I choose, Hudson Valley. So, I mean, I can go back in and do Indeed again with this updated version of it,
Okay.
I use Norman Staffing, but there's Adecco Staffing, there's Ethan Allen Staffing. There's a lot of them locally.
Ethan Allen is who I worked with today.
Okay. I mean, Norman Staffing has been good. They're out of Kingston, but I'm sure they handle this area as well.
Okay.
And, if you have a brief synopsis of as far as what you're looking for and you want to get it to me, I'll make sure we share it. MEF shares it on theirs. I'm sure PTO would share it on theirs, just in case someone didn't see that announcement kind of built into the whole other announcement. So it's separate on its own.
Yeah.
There's also, I know we're not on Facebook, there's probably 5 to 10 different Hudson Valley Help Wanted Facebook pages with tens of thousands of people that are on there. But I know we don't have our own Facebook page, but it might kind of behoove us to think about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if you need help reaching out to any of these companies, Cheryl, let us know. I mean,
Okay.
I don't know. I know like there used to be Teltech, but that was mostly technical services. But Manpower used to supply us with all kinds of staffing. All right. Anything else?
Thank you, Cheryl.
You're welcome. And also the openings are on the website, so anybody can take them from the website. The only one I want to update is the monitors. So that'll go up tomorrow with Carrie. So.
All right. And we've got basically 2 weeks left. So, if you need our help or you need whatever, just reach out as quickly as possible. All right.
Thank you.
Approved correction action plan. Somebody want to give me a quick?
Sure. So the corrective action plan, you'll remember when our auditor went over our documents list at last meeting, our end of the year financials. One of the recommendations and one of the things that we actually got written up for was the fact that we were a little too lenient in what we were accepting for deposits from the clubs, and we were in a position where we were allowing club advisors to make the deposits, and our auditor reminded us, listen, this is an extra class fund, it's a civic group, and we're responsible for having designating officers of the group, and the treasurer, the elected treasurer of the group, is the one who should be making the deposits and signing the deposit receipts. So when I went to the attachment, I think the way that it uploaded, you only saw half of it. Is that right? Or did you get the whole thing there?
I thought we got the whole thing.
Okay, good. All right. So that,
No, actually, you're right.
okay. Then let me just throw this up just for the benefit of being able to see it in its entirety. The only difference is this does have our central treasurer, Lynn Sticker's signature on it. And what we would be recommending is that the board approve this corrective action plan. And upon approval, we will send it up to the Office of the State Comptroller, make sure that they understand that we understand the what our auditors made a recommendation about. We have a plan to move forward in a proper way, and we intend to follow that plan.
Okay. All right. Do we have a, whoops. Do we have, Jesus, come on now. Do we have a motion?
A motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any against? Okay. All right. New reports, financial reports and warrants. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any questions or concerns or comments? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any against? Okay. All right, approve the district safety plan. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, any discussion beyond sort of what we had before? Okay, hopefully everybody's on. All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? Okay. The enrollment report really just there for your entertainment. You know, it's interesting to see, you know, how the numbers, it would be really interesting, but you know, maybe someday is to see as we get further into this remote portion is to, you know, how many people are actually in the buildings. But we'll talk more about that.
I have a question. Some of these in the enrollment, it's the numbers have gone down from September 14th to September 30th.
Yep.
Does that mean that they've opted to go homeschooling, or did they just leave the district? Does that, I mean, not that it really matters. I'm just curious. How many have left to homeschool?
So I have 30, I have, I believe it's 33 homeschoolers right now. So, and I had some new ones drop off from that first September report. So it's definitely a piece of it, the
Okay.
homeschooling.
Interesting.
But the remote kids are still in here, right? I mean, now they're all remote, but we're not looking, we're only thinking going to a different district, moving out of the district, or homeschooling. Right?
That's correct.
All right. Any other questions, comments, concern? All right. Contact tracing.
Yes, so our fabulous nurse team is here this evening to run through 3 to 5 scenarios around contact tracing, and then just some Q&A if you have some questions or the community has some questions.
Since the board probably needs to be on a first name basis with y'all, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Maureen, you want to go first?
Yeah, my name is Maureen Sipe. I'm a registered nurse, and I'm currently assigned to Dutchess Day School.
And Raina?
I'm Raina Monahan. I am currently at the middle school.
And Roseanne?
Hello, Roseanne Halverson. I'm the nurse at Alden.
Sarah?
I am Sarah Wirtz. I'm the nurse at Elm Drive.
And Julie?
Hi, I'm Julie Zengen. I'm the nurse at the high school and at Upton Lake.
Thanks for being here. So Maureen, are you leading this
I can,
contact tracing, or was it Julie that was jumping up and down to do this?
you're the nurse at the high school and Upton Lake?
Yes.
So who's the other half of the nurse for the high school? Maybe I'm missing.
I go to Upton Lake in the morning, and then I come to the high school.
So who's the nurse while you were at Upton Lake?
There currently are no students at the high school right now, and the other nurses cover if there's anything at the high school.
So when we actually go back, though, we gonna switch that around?
As per the health services contract, we do owe hours to our private schools based on enrollment. So that's the timeshare right now.
Didn't we used to, and maybe it was, I don't know, but didn't we had somebody that went part-time to Dutchess Day and then part-time to Upton Lake?
Yeah, that was Maureen. And again, due to enrollment changes, that has shifted, and Dutchess Day is now relatively close to full-time. So that's where Maureen is, and finishing her paperwork and whatnot is the remainder of that time at Dutchess Day.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So there are 5 full-time nurses, but we have 6 schools. Is that correct?
Yes.
Basically,
So
5.5 schools.
So
Right.
when the students are back in session for the hybrid program at the high school in the morning, there is not going to be a nurse in the school.
That's not necessarily true, because there's nothing that says that Julie has to go to Upton Lake first.
Oh, okay, or the opposite. What- how-
Yes, there will have to be a nurse that will have to go to Upton Lake at some point during the day.
No, it's just, I mean, I'll just speak from my personal standpoint. I don't think in this day and age that should be acceptable. You know, taking a chance that we don't have a nurse, you know, I get it. I mean, people could run across, but we heard Dutchess Day had, you know, crazy numbers of people that they were sending home. Not having at least a nurse all the time in each school.
So Brian, if you want to jump in here, but increasing our nursing services in district would require us to increase our nursing services in the private schools. Is that correct?
Well, yeah. So that's what landed us where we are now. So at one point we had a part-time nurse at Elm Drive, and as soon as we went to a full-time nurse at Elm Drive, because there would be comparable nursing services that would be required to be provided at a non-public school, as the district of location, we would be responsible for providing the same level of nursing services. So as soon as we went to full-time last year at Elm Drive, we had a responsibility to go mostly full-time with Dutchess Day, and that's where we are now, because there are comparable needs in terms of population. Upton Lake, on the other hand,
Only a half.
I'm sorry?
Why is Upton Lake only a half?
Because Upton Lake has approximately, and I'm going to say approximately because this was last year's numbers, but they have 65 students on a K-12 basis. So in terms of comparable nursing services, our requirement, our state education department requirement to provide nursing services is less. So we would say that we would be providing the required services that we would without additional burdening of the taxpayers.
So so basically, I have to supply a full-time nurse to Duchess Day and be stuck with a half, and I don't mean this, please don't take this wrong, have nothing, have a half-time nurse at our high school because we added a nurse in our elementary school. This makes no sense. I mean, I don't understand how we get penalized, like we lose half of a full-time nurse in the high school because we added, another half a nurse in Elm.
Yeah, so I would say that it's at the high school just because that's where the staffing landed, or wherever that happened. But with regard to state education department regulations, it is true that we have to provide those comparable nursing services. So we are on the hook for that. And then we create, Caroline alluded to the health service contract. So we bill back to school districts who have students in non-public schools within our catchment area. So, and not to get too much into the detail, but the calc would look something like this. We take all of our nursing services that we would provide, and we add up all of the students in Upton Lake, Duchess Day, and Millbrook Central School District, and we would divide it and get a per student number. And then any, let's say, and I'll just take Wappingers as an example. If Wappingers has 10 kids that go to Duchess Day, we would take the amount of the per student number, multiply it by 10, and send them an invoice.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think having any one of our school buildings. No, just hearing the numbers that were quoted about Duchess Day and how many people they send home, to have a half a day with no nurse and I don't care what building you're talking, Elm, Alden, the middle school, high school, it doesn't make sense to me.
Hey, Perry, I just went back and looked at the enrollment of the different schools. And at the high school, there's 298 students, middle school 210, Alden 161, Elms 173. And high school is the one that's got the part-time nurse?
No, that's because it was decided that way in the beginning of the school year because there was currently no students in the high school.
Okay.
Just based on programming. But that's not to say that that's the way
That's not the way it's going to stay.
Okay.
Would there be anything, I mean, could we keep Julie full-time in the high school and hire her part-time to go to Upton? I mean, is that even an option or no?
Absolutely, it's an option if the board wanted to. So again, keep in mind, the reason why we're here is just because we increased services and we said that we absolutely wanted to have a full-time nurse in each building. So if we still feel that way, then and that's what we want to do, we can absolutely hire. And it would be about a third of a nurse, not a half. But yes, we would be able to hire to the extent that we could find them. We can hire a third of an FTE of a nurse and put them at Upton Lake. Sure.
It sounded like Cheryl did have some leads on that if it was going to be a permanent thing. So maybe we can, maybe it'll be easier than it sounds.
Yeah, I mean, we decided that we wanted a full-time nurse in each building and we implemented that. And then we don't have a full-time nurse in one of our buildings, but Duchess Day does. This makes it like zero sense.
Well, if I can say, I don't recall, maybe other board members do, but I don't recall ever hearing that we were partially staffing nursing in our schools. I mean, I don't think it came up at budget time, so maybe there was a swizzling that happened or somebody cut back on hours, and I just never heard of this.
It had for years and years, I would say it was true that we didn't staff it. And I don't want to say years and years, but certainly at least consecutive years. And then a decision was made to increase, and that's when the change occurred.
But it didn't. I don't remember what the swizzle was. That this goes back like last year or 2 years ago. I don't remember what the swizzle was made, but it didn't become a budget item. It was. I don't even remember, but it was, well, we can talk about it in executive session, but
Can I ask really quick?
I just don't understand how we can say, hey, we want a full-time nurse in East Building, and that decision, we get hosed out of a full-time position and Dutchess Day gets one. That makes zero sense to me. Yeah, but, you know.
Brian, is that because of our proximity? How come we're the district, just because I'm not familiar with this, how come we're the district that does that?
Yep.
And
So-
bills it out to everybody else?
Yep. So if we think about the borders of our school district, that school is actually, Dutchess Day is actually in our catchment area. So said differently, any house that is near Dutchess Day, those students belong to us. So their responsibilities as the district of location, and it's really just a border thing. That school is in our borders, within our borders. The same would have been true for years and years. Roseanne was our nurse who worked at St. Joe's before they closed down. Our same responsibility was to St. Joe's as a non-public within our borders.
Okay, I thought so. Thank you.
Sure.
Want to talk some contact tracing?
Yes, please.
Maureen?
All right, so we had a couple scenarios that were discussed. I think they were at least one of them was born out of the last board meeting where there were some questions like what if. So I believe one of the what if scenarios that I would start with, it's a nice, I hope everyone ate. What if a student vomits on the bus and is brought to school? What do we do with that? So basically, relatively simply, because I was going to say simply, they are distanced on the bus. They are wearing masks on the bus. If someone gets sick, whether it be they're just not feeling good or they throw up on the bus, then the bus comes to school. When that student gets off the bus, they're brought to the isolation area of said school. And at that time, their parents would be contacted. They would be expected to be picked up within a reasonable amount of time. I think we talked about like 30 minutes. And then that child or that student would be referred to a healthcare provider. And then they follow the cascade of events from there, given that nausea and vomiting are on the list of signs and symptoms of COVID-19 on the New York State Department of Health flow charts that we were given. We inform the family of that. They have to see a healthcare provider, get a negative COVID test, and have symptom resolution in order to return to school. So,
and I know this isn't your, maybe you, Maureen, but what happens to the bus under that scenario?
So every other student on the bus, because they were socially distanced and wearing a mask, they will continue to school as normal.
No, I meant the actual bus.
Oh, the bus.
Yeah.
Yep. I don't see the transportation person today.
Well, say it's the first run. I mean, I'm assuming that we're going to have 2 runs like usual. Is that correct, Brian? Or is it going to be 1 run for everyone?
No, it's going to be 2 runs.
Okay, so
Yeah.
say this is a bus on the first run.
Yeah.
So that would be like a bus cleaning protocol. And maybe even Mike Ragusa could answer that better than I, but there are certain cleaners that are approved for COVID-19 and they have certain time periods that you have to leave the space you've just sanitized before you can use it again. But Mike can answer that probably better than me. I'm sure
So since we had a sort of a real-time one, rather than go through some hypotheticals, take me through what happened. The person that came in and had, it turned out they had. Take me through who did what and when, because I mean that's a real.
I was not there, so I'm going to very happily hit mute and someone else can.
What, in school? What happens when something happens in school?
No. There was a situation where somebody filled out the form, said yes, and I don't want to, please don't go into names, but somebody checked the box, said yes, came to school with some symptoms, somehow, again, got through our, like our first wall, and went into the schools, went into a few buildings. Take me through that, how we figured it out, when did we contact the health department, just run me through that scenario, because that's a real life, this just happened in our district. Which one, did one of the nurses?
Yeah, that's Roseanne.
Yeah, that's me. We had someone come in, filled out the screener like you had said, showing symptoms. So that person was immediately sent home, and all the cleaning was done as per protocol as far as that person's room and any place where that person had been. And she went to the doctor, had the COVID test, and we took it from there. We just followed protocol with the 14 days quarantine, and I think it went all rather smoothly.
No, I think it did.
Yeah,
here it did, but we also had almost no kids in.
Yeah, which was good and it was first thing in the morning. It was before the school started.
So what would have changed if, assuming the person's in for, I don't know, an hour or two, and the kids are there? What, do you guys really know what to do, who to call, who to contact, how to figure out which kids saw who inside the building, which rooms need to be cleaned? All that stuff is like second nature now.
Yep.
Well, I think I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, Rosie. Go ahead. I think in theory, this individual, right, answered yes on the screener. In a perfect world, they wouldn't enter the building, right?
Right. Well,
that would have been like the first stop. But it's very realistic to say that any person could be in the building for 3 hours and then really start to feel lousy. Yep. And we don't know if they have COVID or not. So same, whatever question warranted a yes on the screener could happen at noon on any given day. So what would happen for that if it was a student in a third grade classroom, for instance, if that third graders has a fever and or all they really need to have is a fever, or all they really need to have is a sore throat. But let's say they have a fever and a sore throat. The nurse goes to the classroom, removes them from the classroom, brings them to the isolation space. At that point, we know this child is symptomatic for something. We call home. We're going to have at least 3 people on that emergency list. So we're going to come and pick them up within a reasonable amount of time, about 30 minutes. Also synonymous with that, someone is letting Mr. Ragusa and or whoever's in charge in that classroom, that whole class is removed from their classroom. So while nurse is with student calling parent for pickup, doctor referral, get your COVID test, get better and come back. At the same time as that, Mr. Ragusa and his team are going into the space. That teacher and the rest of the classmates would be displaced for a certain period of time. And then Mr. Ragusa, if you want to take it from here, they do their thing over there.
Yeah, so what happens is once a student leaves the room, if they go to the isolation room, they move the class to another room, the rest of the class to another room. We go in the room, we put the UV light in the room for 15, 20 minutes to kill any germs that are in the air. And then we go in the room with the mister and we spray to kill any germs that are in the air also, just to back it up. Then we clean everything with the cleaners, and then we mist the room, and then probably a half an hour after the room is emptied, people can go back in the room and the room is clean.
Hey, Mike, quick question for you on that. Say it's November and late November, everybody has their winter jackets and their backpacks with them. Are they going to leave their belongings behind when they're displaced?
So at the meetings with the state that I go to, they said that the best thing to do is take everything with them to the other room. That it doesn't make any difference to leave everything there. I thought it would be better to leave everything there and spray the room down with everything, but they had told me that when the class leaves the room, they should take everything with them. And then when they come back, they should bring everything back.
That's bizarre.
Interesting.
But that's, I would have thought that you leave everything there and you just leave the room. And what they're telling me to let the kids take everything with them. And then when they come back, let them bring everything back.
And we got that same guidance from Frank Guglieri as well.
Yes.
But isn't that odd? I mean, you could be taking surfaces that are contaminated with you into another room, and then after you clean it, you bring them back. I mean, I don't know. A lot of things from the state doesn't seem to make sense to me. So,
True. But a lot of the literature is showing more airborne than contact, like than droplet precautions. It's more airborne in the, like with the events that are spreader events, it's more airborne caught respiratorily. That's what they're finding. But in this same scenario, we're sort of not done yet. We have the student, we sent them home. Mr. Ragusa came, he did his good work in the
Can I
classroom.
stop you here for a second?
Oh, sure.
Maureen, I want to go back to Mike. When you mentioned we come in, the district in your department does not have a emergency response team. So who is we that's going to be coming in to do the cleaning? The local assigned people?
No, my custodian in the building. Everybody in the building has been trained what to do. My other subs are all, not my subs, my, what do you call them? I have 2 extra custodians that, like, I have a mail carrier and I have people that move food and everything. Those people are all trained. Everybody's trained. So if anybody, like if one of my guys is out and somebody else is in the building that day, everybody knows what to do in a case like this. Everybody knows we don't go in the room. We just push the light in, we plug it in the hallway, we push the light in, the remote, we put the light on, let it kill the airborne germs. Then we go in, we give it a quick mist. Then a minute and a half, 2 minutes later, we go in, we clean all the touchable surfaces, chairs, doorknobs, light switches, phone, everything. And then we give it a quick mist. And then minutes later, you can go in the room again.
Okay, just want to make sure we have enough staffing to help to do this, amongst their regular duties.
Can I interrupt for a second and just speak to what Mike said? In the middle school, I've had probably 4 or 5 times where I've needed maintenance to come into a room, and they've responded very rapidly, and it has worked extremely well. I understand that we don't have a ton of students, but in fact, the response of the custodial staff is swift.
yeah, we just have to make sure. And the point about not having a lot of students is a good one, because when there's all the students or half of the students are back, if we have issues in 3 buildings, which would not be surprising to me, do we have the people to go, blast 3 buildings or 4 buildings or 8 classrooms at the same time? So, I mean, I know we can't hire 400 people and just have them hanging around, but we need to make sure that, we're not tied up for cleaning here, cleaning there, bouncing these folks back and forth.
So just a quick question. If we can't find a nurse full-time in the high school, what's the protocol if someone has symptoms and the nurse is not there?
In the past, as the nurse in the middle school, I have gone over to the high school and reversed. The high school has covered me. So I'm there. I have a radio. My cell is on my office phone. And if I need to, I would go over to the high school.
Okay, so the teacher would bring them to the quarantine room or the nurse's office, or I know it's a little different than before. That's why I was just curious.
Yes, there would be someone that would escort the potential person to the isolation room, and then I would take over from there.
All right. I mean, does anybody have any questions? I mean, I guess it's really just going to come down to, you know, we're never going to be ready for all of them.
No, we're gonna be ready. We just don't know what it is. We'll be ready for it when it
Well,
comes.
Can I ask just two follow-up questions?
I'll make sure you're the first person I call
Perfect.
when there's no one there.
I will help you in any way I can. Mr. Tobin, one quick second. I just want to say that this student who got sick in the 3rd grade at noon and now they've come to isolation, I've contacted their parents, they went home, they go to the healthcare provider. Hopefully they go directly there. That's best case scenario. And then Mr. Ragusa's team, they come, they do their thing, clean everything up, and then hopefully that 3rd grade group gets to go back into their classroom. Now, if that all happened at like noon, if they went directly and got a rapid COVID test, and this is where the game changes either way again. Let's say they get a rapid COVID test and we find out they're negative. You know, open communication with the parents is key, right? Like, please let me know as soon as, you know, you get results either way, you know, let me know. So as soon as they get the negative, I've found people are really excited to tell you they're negative. So negative kind of lets you take a little bit of a breath, although the efficacy of the rapid test is about 85% right now. Whenever they draw a rapid test, they also send out a PCR, and those results take maybe a couple days, right? So you can take a little breath that sore throat was not COVID. And maybe they come back strep positive, right? Now, the other case scenario is, what if that kid with the sore throat who was symptomatic at noon comes back positive? Then you have to turn and pivot again, because that's when you have to look deeper in the contact tracing. Who was within 6 feet of that student for 10 minutes or more? And that makes them a close contact. And that's where the DOH gets involved, and you do all those other calls once you have a confirmed positive.
So,
But having symptomatic people is very likely.
Maureen, if so, do we, you know, the rapid test, do we then say, oh, negative, so you can come back to school right then? Or do we still wait?
Yes.
Yes. So far, the New York State Department of Health has said we can accept a COVID-19 test. So that is understood to be a PCR or a rapid, either way.
Okay.
Right, ladies?
If PCR comes back positive 2 days later, then you have a lot more contact tracing to do.
You do.
That's right.
The whole bus, whoever was in the class, whoever was absent today but was there yesterday when the student was in class. You had a sub teacher that day, they had music, like all different scenarios.
And then we become Marist College.
Well,
so
And is it the same for like the whole kid on the bus puking thing, that they go to the school, they go in the isolation room or wherever, the parent picks them up. If they test positive, then you do the contact tracing on the bus.
Mhm.
Okay.
So in theory, any student who comes back positive, it gets a little bit more difficult when they start switching classes in junior high and high school. But, you know, say a 2nd grader, it's the real areas are going to be their cohort and their bus.
Okay.
And whatever teachers they may have interacted with.
Okay, thanks.
So did we tell parents, or are we like you know, right in their face telling parents that if in the event your child has symptoms or you didn't feel it, you have 30 minutes to get there and get them, and what if not? You know, the parent says, I got a meeting in New York City. You called me, but it'll take me 2.5 hours to get there. What's the or else?
So every student who's in the school has a emergency card. So I think that I think we've been pretty clear on any of these public meetings that there's a low threshold for being in school and that people have to be prepared for that. But every student has their emergency card. So it's call mom cell phone, home phone, work phone, dad, no, in no particular order, but guardian. Then there's at least 2 or 3 emergency contacts. So if that person is your emergency contact, they should be someone this year. Your emergency contact should be someone willing to pick up your sick child.
It within 30 minutes of getting the call.
Mhm.
And but I mean that's one of the things. I mean, I don't know how many in the past. You know, I don't think anybody ever felt like they had a 30 minutes to get there to get their kid.
I can
But-
assure you they didn't feel that way.
Right. So, you know, what are we changing here? We're still telling them 30 minutes, and yet, I mean, is there some? Do you know what I mean? Is there some or else to
Like
this?
consequence, if you will. Is there-
Right, exactly. You know.
None other than Aunt Lucy's getting called because she's the next one, and then Aunt Susie because she's the next one. Like you could potentially call down the list 8 people. I mean, or at least 8 different numbers, probably 3 people plus 2 guardians for each card, right, guys?
But as a just like a PSA, this is a really good reminder that we need to make sure as parents that the information we have on record is the most accurate and up-to-date information for people, both for parents and for emergency contacts. We do send that out in the beginning of the school year, but we don't always get them back consistently. So it is really important, not just for COVID, but for any kind of emergency involving the child, that we have, you know, multiple different people that we have permission to call in the event of a medical emergency with your child.
Well, maybe, I mean, I don't know if it's allowed, but maybe it's you know, we're going back to school on November 2nd in AABB. For your child to be a part of that, you must have up to date this, you must understand this, you know, so that, I mean, I know it's not really a consequence, but you're going to stay remote unless we have those things in place.
I would assume that a lot of the emergency contacts are grandparents too, and I'm not sure the grandparents are going to want to pick up a potentially COVID positive child either. So you might run into issues there as well.
Yeah, so that's something to think about when updating your emergency contacts, because we can only call who the parent gives us permission to call on those lists.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as long as they know that there's a clock, right?
I will say that when mom or dad or the primary guardians are not able to be reached from a 677 phone number, once you call that next person, they seem to respond to that next person via text message. So just and those people further down the list, sometimes they have more of a direct line to the top of the list. That's just been my experience.
Could I ask, how does it work? How does communications from a bus work, from a bus driver? How does word get to us? Who does what?
So there's a radio, and they would radio to the dispatch, and dispatch would call the school district.
And who would they be calling?
They would be calling the office of the building. So if it's an elementary run, they would be calling Elm Drive or Alden Place.
And by the way, who from the district is aware of how ready they are, how acutely aware of their bus operators are?
So I'm in touch with First Student. Transportation is under me in my role. So we're in touch with First Student on a regular basis. We're going through protocols. We're having understanding what trainings that they're having. We're going back and forth. You know, principals and Caroline are having great conversation with and Elliot about some things that may happen when something arises, and we have to think about how we're going to do something. We open up the communication, and administrators are in touch directly also.
Thanks for that.
We've also scheduled weekly meetings with nurses. So the admin team and the nurses are meeting every week just to make sure that we're answering questions. We're thinking about things deeply and strategically.
I have two other questions just quickly, Laura.
Mhm.
So the return to work form, the same for staff and students?
You mean for the criteria for returning?
Mhm.
Correct.
And is there an alternative diagnosis as part of that or just the test itself? Suppose that a symptom and they go to the doctor does the quick test and or not, or can he say that they have allergies?
In some situations, an alternative diagnosis from the provider is accepted, and in some situations, it's not. So, for example,
No. So that's statewide or countywide? That answer. Just I'm saying, is that like
It's
Dutchess,
statewide, but
Health
it's
County Health Department?
the New York State
Is it
Department
one
of
or the
Health.
other or both?
It's the New York State Department of Health who says that there is an alternative diagnosis accepted, but it is very, very specific. So I actually ran into this last week, which I had shared with Julie, where a family was resistant to have the COVID test done and had an alternate diagnosis. The alternate.
I'm only sharing it, Maureen, because it's going to happen.
Yeah,
And then
no,
what-
I mean,
but we know exactly what to do. We know exactly what to do. This isn't a problem. We know exactly which diagnoses are acceptable and which are not. I'm sorry. I think I stopped talking because I thought that you were trying to say something. I was going to give the examples.
Oh, go for it.
Go ahead. Give the examples. Go ahead. Who am I speaking to?
So viral.
Julie.
This is Julie Sangen.
Good. Yeah.
So, for example, a laboratory confirmed strep positive would be acceptable. Okay, a laboratory confirmed flu positive would be acceptable. A general diagnosis of viral gastroenteritis would not be acceptable because there is no lab confirmation.
Okay. Somebody send that to me in writing so I can see that from
It's
either the. No, I'm just saying for the board. I'm asking a question as a board member. So back up a little bit and just, I'm asking for information. I want to see in writing from the Dutchess County Health Department or New York State the answer you just gave me. Okay, that's what I'm asking for. End of the conversation. Second question, just to clarify this one. With siblings, what are we doing with that said child when they get sick? What are we doing with the one or two or three other kids in different buildings?
Perfect. That was one of our scenarios.
Yeah, that's also been defined by the health department as well. So we talked about this in our meeting last week. So Raina or Julie, Sarah, you guys were all there. Does one of you want to just walk through what happens with the siblings? So long as they are asymptomatic, and then if they became symptomatic, how it all goes?
Especially if they're in different schools.
Okay, I'll give it a shot. This is Raina Monahan talking. So if we have a student that we put out because they're symptomatic or their family keeps them out because they're symptomatic, the siblings or other students that may live in the same household and go to other schools are not they're not told they need to stay home unless they are also symptomatic. However, at the same time, the child that is symptomatic, we are asking that child be seen within 48 hours by a practitioner and then tested for COVID if the doctor says so, and we go from there. If the child is positive, then we follow the same protocol that we would if that student had actually gone to school and been in class. The siblings or household members are isolated. They're to be kept home and seen by the doctor. If the family does not take that first symptomatic child to the doctor within 48 hours, then according to New York State Department of Health, we presume that student to be positive, and therefore the household members are also presumed to be first contacts, and they are going to be excluded from school until they meet the criteria set out by the Department of Health.
So everyone in the family, so the child tests positive, then everyone in the family is basically kind of
Con-
guilty until proven innocent?
Correct. They're considered first contacts. Yes.
Okay.
And they are treated that. Yes, absolutely.
Thanks, Raina. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Okay.
And you'll see the protocols, they're posted on our website and they're straight from the New York State pre-K to grade 12 COVID-19 toolkit. So it has all of those flow charts and that's what we're following to make our decisions. So what Julie was just saying and what Raina was just saying is documented in there as well.
And
So the part with the alternative diagnosis that was explained to me by Julie is on there as well?
I think
With the laboratory test, that's specific?
Yeah, correct. It is on there. Page A2.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Listen, you don't have to get defensive. I'm just asking for information. I have the right as a board member to ask for information, and I feel like you're taking don't get defensive. We're a team here. So
I'm
I don't
sorry.
know-
I'm not being defensive. I'm really not. I think it's difficult because you can't see my face.
I don't know. I'm getting that. Okay, maybe.
all right, all
I'm
right.
just saying.
So, yeah, I mean, there's a few things, when we did our walkthrough this afternoon, we talked about, like the high school kids, can they fill out their own form? When they turn 18, some of them are still seniors in high school or whatever. Can they fill out their own forms? I know these are all decisions you guys got to go figure out and after you figure it out, I'm sure you'll get conflicting guidance. But there's a lot of these things that just, and one of the things just for the board, I mean, when we went through the schools and I'm trying, I can't even remember who told me this. When I looked at some of the, the quarantine rooms, I mean, they're just stark. I mean, there's nothing on the walls. There's that machine that's sucking the air out of the place or whatever it's doing. There's the, in the high school, we need to make those rooms look, even if we have to paint a mural on them or something, so that, a kid gets hauled into this room, gets isolated, quarantined. We don't want them in there like freaking out about, oh my God, am I going to make it? We should have stuff in there. I know it's more surfaces to make Mike clean and all that, but we especially the little ones, make sure the room, it doesn't look like they've been slapped in a holding cell. All right, anybody else? Anything else? And I know you guys, I mean, please don't take that, we're as a board, or I think as a board, we're really worried about, sort of the unknown. And I know you guys are on the front line figuring this stuff out. So take, our questions and our concern and all that as nothing more than we want to make sure that everything's been thought of, everything, and everybody has what they need to make this as safe as humanly possible. So,
Hey, Perry, just a quick question. You mentioned the walkthroughs. Is there anything in here that we're gonna have time to discuss that, or should?
hang on a minute, Chris. Safety. Thought we did, but I guess I didn't. We should. I mean, we do need to. Hopefully, during the executive session, we'll have some time to really talk about specifics, because I worry that some of the stuff we're going to talk about is, safety and student specifics. So I think that's where we were hoping to do the majority of it, and then we can always bring, if there's items that we think the public needs to know and can know, then we'll bring those back.
Sounds good.
All right. All right. So anything else before we move on? All right. The next section is, and thank you guys. I know we've been putting everybody through a lot. So thank you guys for coming out, or sort of coming out.
Yes, thank you to the nurses. That was informative.
Great team. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you all again for answering the questions. Thank you.
All right, so we do have period for questions from the public specific to the transition, you know, the actual transition as we move forward. Anything from Cheryl, anything from the public?
No, we don't have any questions tonight.
Do we have any I mean, can you tell if anybody
Yes.
has joined us?
Yep. We have right now 21 watching.
Oh, good. Okay. We'll just wait another, 2 minutes just in case. All right. So next section, we've got, if you look at is just future agenda items. There are some specifics that we put in under administrative, but this really also goes back to changing our policy, our process for setting the agenda, getting this calendar done with Cheryl, getting items on there, putting pins in places. If someone wants to talk about whatever, putting a pin in a meeting that we've already scheduled will ensure that we're actually hitting items. So is there anything anyone wants to, specifically wants to put on the agenda? I mean, you don't necessarily have to do it here, but kind of cool.
I'd just like to bring up, I think I saw something that potentially in future goals, some form of goals we're going to talk about. And I think I'd like to understand what we plan to do with them, because we haven't had a very good track record in the past couple of years. So about that. Yeah. So for me, and here again, I'm just one person, but for me to put time into working on that, I kind of want to be assured up front something's going to change.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, John. I mean, our specifically the district goals is, getting things, and right now, it almost feels like, and they're all under the future agenda. That's where you saw them, John, I think. Mm-hmm. The putting time into goals right now, I mean, the goal is to survive. So it's sort of, do we really have the people, the time? And this doesn't mean we're going to discuss those right now. These are items we already have on our list. But if there was other things, but I agree with you. I mean, these when we set board goals, the district goals need to lead it, and they need to be something that can be achieved. It actually gets us someplace. If it's just, like a lot of these goals, make the whole world smile and do things better today than I did it yesterday. I mean, those mean nothing.
It's got to be a focus, and there's got to be follow-up on stuff. So that's all. So
they got to be based in reality.
Put some thought into that part of it.
And if I may add, Caroline and I have been meeting with strategic planners, just sort of checking out who the consultants who are out there and who have things that we may be interested in that they're offering. And so we've met with Education Elements. We have a coherence planning consultant tomorrow, a meeting with him, Mr. Costa. And then I know that Caroline in the past presented Dimension. So I've envisioned that one of these consultants who we think are aligned with our philosophy and our direction would be able to help facilitate conversations and create district goals as well as board goals to help with you to sort of what is the larger vision and how do we help them come to fruition, the visions that you want to come to fruition. So that hope is that that consultant will be able to guide us and keep us to a timeline, hold us accountable, and make us go forward. Because I feel like oftentimes when it's left to a district, it's all good intention, but then things pull you away from that work. So bringing in a consultant will guide us and keep us on target. And
I think we really have, we need to sit down as a board and see if we really do have any common, you know, I mean, you guys, you know, I'm sure you're sick of hearing me talk about sustainability and you know, environmental conservation, but that to me is one of the things that I really want to see Millbrook stand out in our city. But you know, if the rest of the board doesn't believe or doesn't think that's where we should be heading, then there's no, you know, we're not going to create a goal. But then we also need goals. Once we've established something like that, you establish, I want to reduce our carbon footprint by 20%. And by the year, I don't know, 2022, or by 2025, I want, you know, those are the kinds of things that then, you know, Brian and Caroline and Laura can say, all right, well, you know, we can hit this piece over here and it'll cost this, and we lay out an actual plan to do these things versus, again, just, you know, generic. Wouldn't it be wonderful if you know, if every student that graduates, you know, gets their first job is $1 million a year? Well, that's wonderful. It would be great, but it doesn't, you know, it doesn't get us anywhere. All right, anyone have anything else for that? Otherwise, we'll, do I have a motion to go to executive session for matters that will imperil public safety if disclosed, matters of employment history of particular persons?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any against? All right. All right, Cheryl, send us on our way.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks, Maureen.
Yeah, Julie and Maureen, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Julie. Thanks, Maureen.
Who's coming in to this at first? Are we gonna contact Beth now, or are we waiting for Beth?
We need, Caroline, do we need Beth after all?
Oh, we don't? Okay. All right. Does she already know that, Caroline, or should I text her?
So we got one.
She probably doesn't know that. I can text her.
That's all right.
All right, so why don't we, so if we don't need her, well, I guess it's really Laura, Caroline, and Brian, and we can, I think
You'll
that,
tell people when to go.
yeah, or and we can always pull somebody, you know, pull other people in.
Do you guys see your invites?
No.
Not yet. Nope.
You see them now?
Got it.
Got it.
Elliot, just ignore your breakout room on this. You can ignore that. Caroline, do you see yours? Yes, go in.
Oh, okay, I didn't know.
Yeah, yeah. It sounded like you should both go. Are they going to be calling on you? You're muted.
Am I going or not going?
I don't think so. Were they discussing something?
Laura had told me that I should be ready to go in case. I don't know if that's a now or later thing.
I don't know. Let me text her. Sorry about that, Elliot.
No worries. I'm going to close this, or I'll just let it hang out. You let me know.
All right.